Could you kindly share if you have any examples of AI-based compromises that you have seen that you
Yeah.
feel are, had a big impact?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on kind of which direction you want to go with that. So I know Canvas had a
Yeah.
recent large incident, and there's a lot of issues there with, student profiles of different ages and a lot of, federal compliance issues that they're going to be facing with that. But even getting outside of there, prompt injection is kind of a thing that a lot of
Yeah.
people talk about. There's, I think of one example where, someone, I believe they sued on it too, where they spoke to the AI chatbot and got it to give them a discount on a product, right? Social engineering is a real thing, but if you don't, if you have a chatbot that's 24/7 and you don't have, additional people checking on that. So
Mm.
probably good to follow up on those. As far as other larger breaches or just, bigger issues, I think just data leaking is a big one.
Mm. Yeah.
You have
That's very
Claude,
good.
right, with the new thing where it's finding all these new vulnerabilities, and that becomes an issue. Kind of touched on that earlier, where you might want to pin your development versions, and you still need to have the rigor on, lifecycle management, data lifecycle management, your SDLC processes, checking dependencies, not just installing whatever is on the internet, right? Making sure that there's some
That's a huge one.
diligence happening on that. And I think that that's a risk with vibe coding and all
Yeah.
these. So don't be wary of pulling in the intern and vibe coding your next, quarterly, deployment, because it may be worse for you than you were hoping. So
The sad part is over the long weekend, I, was with a friend. He worked for a pretty large company, and he was giving an example how there's a trend of hiring junior engineers and then giving them access to AI tools. And that is better than a senior engineer because now they can cut down the cost, and they feel the AI is doing the rest because its knowledge and experience is
yeah,
irrelevant now
a
because
lot of
AI
tech debt.
has it. And
Yeah.
they're vibe coding into it pretty much. And I've heard examples where people, when they ask like, well, what did you build? They don't know. And they are like, oh, let me just check. And I think that's, like, to your point, is very dangerous because when you're vibe coding something, it is injecting, stuff which you don't know where it's coming from. And it's just like, yeah, code that runs perfect. Number one, that can break and you don't know what it is. And number two, is injecting stuff. And to the point, like, have we seen AI issues and AI attack, like you said, SQL
Yeah.
injection, the
But
AI injections? I think bigger time bombs are probably going to happen. That's my
Well,
biggest concern.
we touched on it slightly, is the
Yeah.
Shai-Hulud worm, where it installs based on, through a lot of vibe coding and installing these dependencies. But when it runs, it immediately goes after tokens,
Mm.
your GitHub keys and things like that. And it had compromised, I think at the time it was a lot of Node JS and things like that. But there's a few different iterations now of the same worm. But it, stole these keys and would self-propagate itself to these other repositories. So now you're installing these that you think are legitimate, and you're updating because PCI says you need to keep everything up to date. And now you're compromised, and whatever you had is now compromised. If you're an open source developer, that's now anyone that's using that, right? So I think there's a kind of an implicit trust with, well, this comes from open source, it'll be fine. And I'm just vibe coding through it anyways, right? So there's not that
Yeah.
rigor of testing and going through these things that would normally be done.